Alright, we're going to continue Ranger in Time, Ancient Rome. Chapter 9. Swords, Shields, and Armor. Marcus woke to Villius's barking voice. "Marcus Cassius, get yourself up and bring Quintus for training!" Villius threw open the barracks door and tossed Marcus a bit of bread and cheese. Marcus rose from his straw pallet and belted his tunic. He gave Ranger some water and a crust of bread and then nibbled the rest as he shook Quintus awake. "Do you have water?" Quintus asked, grimacing. His voice was sandy and hoarse. "And food?" His eyes fell on the bread and cheese in Marcus's hand. "Here." Marcus handed Quintus his flask for a drink. He broke off some cheese and bread to share, even though he knew there might be no more food until dinner. Villius would not be generous with the mood he was in today. "I am grateful," Quintus said, taking a swig of water. He bit into the crusty bread and looked around. "Villius brought us nothing more to eat?" "To punish you for running, and me for failing to keep you here," Marcus said. "But do not worry, you will have dinner tonight. It is not in Villius's interest to starve you. The crowd loves a strong gladiator." Quintus scoffs. "The crowd must love Clito." "They do," Marcus nodded. He fights bravely. He must. He has a wife and a child at home. He will do anything to win his freedom so that he may return to them." Quintus's face fell. Marcus wished he could take back his words. He knew what it felt like to have no one. "And you have your brother." "That is why I must win my freedom, to protect him." He stretched his arms above his head. They were scratched and bruised from the rubble of the fire. Marcus's memories of family had faded. He never cried for his parents any more. But Marcus wished he had a brother to protect him. He felt a hot sting in his eyes, and a tear slipped down his cheek. He turned away so Quintus would not notice. But Ranger saw. It reminded him of the time that Luke had been hurt at a soccer game and had been carried off of the field. Ranger had run right up to nuzzle Luke's face. He had seen this same look in Luke's wet eyes, a mixture of hurt and brave. Ranger stepped up and tried to nuzzle Marcus too, but the boy pushed his nose away. Marcus blinked hard and turned to Quintus. "If you are to win your freedom, you will need to train hard. You must learn to use the weapons better than anyone else." "Villius will never teach me now." Quintus dropped his arms to his side. "He is furious, and he only wants to see me lose." "Then I will teach you myself," Marcus said. He thought Quintus might laugh, and was glad when he did not. "I've been here for 5 years. I've seen all the best gladiators train. Tigress, and Berilius, and Diomedes, and Clito too. I've watched them fight and learned their moves." He looked at Quintus. "I will teach you everything." Before Quintus could answer, Villius burst into the cell. He removed the shackle from Quintus's leg. His ankle was swollen and raw. "Take him to be outfitted," Villius told Marcus, and stalked into the courtyard. "This way," Marcus told Quintus, and led him across the stone to a large stone building with a guard posted outside. "Our new gladiator needs weapons and armor," Marcus told the man. The guard looked Quintus up and down. "Villius says he is to be a retariaris." He disappeared into the room. Marcus's heart sank. His expression must have shown because Quintus looked alarmed. "What is that? Is that not a good thing?" "No, all is well," Marcus told him. "You'll have a bit of armor, plus a trident, and a net to trap your opponent." Quintus looked relieved to hear that. When Marcus did not want him to know the truth, that was the lowest gladiator of them all, that he almost always fought a heavily armed secutor in the arena, and worst of all, that Clito was a secutor. The weapons guard returned with a trident, a long stick with a sharp forked end, a net, and a protective guard to fit over his shoulder. "This goes on your left arm," the man told Quintus. Then he brought a large wooden sword and shield. "These are only for training." The ranger sniffed at the pile of weapons. He smelled the metal and the wood, men and their sweat. Quintus reached down to pick up the shield. "Oh, so heavy!" he exclaimed. And then he lifted the sword. "And this is as well." "That is to prepare you," Marcus told him. "Set the net and trident aside. For now you will practice with the wooden sword and the shield. They are twice the weight, so that your real weapons feel light and handle easily on the day of the games. Now come with me. Villius will be waiting. It is time for your training to begin." So that's the trident up in the corner here. Alright, Chapter 10, Preparing to Fight. All morning long Quintus practiced at the palace, for now he did not use the net and trident. He only worked with his heavy wooden shield and sword to build his strength. Ranger found a nearby patch of shadow and sprawled in the dirt. His ears pricked up every time Cleto came near, but the older gladiator ignored Quintus and kept to his own training. Marcus brought Ranger a bowl with some water and set to his work. He cleaned out the barracks, he delivered messages for Villis, he emptied the pots in the cells and collected the urine to use for washing clothes later. When he could, he came back to the center of the training yard to watch and call out advice. When you strike the polis, you must think of it as your opponent, he told Quintus. Remember that a high strike is a blow to the head, I know, but I have no more hits in me. I can barely lift my weapon any more. Quintus dropped his sword and shield to the ground and bent over to catch his breath. Keep practicing, Marcus told him. You will get stronger. There was no break for food at midday, but Villius gave Marcus a few coins and sent him out to the street vendors outside the Ludus Magnus. He brought Quintus bread and a small bowl of stew with garum, a sauce made of fish, salt, and spices, left to rot in the sun. Ranger sniffed at the bowl. It smelled rancid and sharp, like garbage left out too long in the summer. But Quintus practically inhaled the meal. He saved the last of his bread for Ranger. I wish I had a bit of more crust to thank you with, dog. Quintus stroked the fur of Ranger's back as Ranger scarfed down the bread. You saved my brother's life. Quintus turned to Marcus. And I must also thank you. I do not know why you are so kind to me, but I will repay you when I can. You will need to train harder to do that. Marcus handed him a flask of water. Now back to the palace. I imagine that you are battling with Cleto. You must win to survive. Quintus spent the rest of the afternoon training with the wooden sword, whacking the palace as if it were an opponent. He practiced high blows to the brute's head and low hits to the leg. Quintus held his heavy shield steady and maneuvered it to be ready, just in case the wooden post ever struck back. Once Villius stopped to watch him, Marcus thought he saw a flash of admiration in the manager's eyes, but it was only there for a moment before he turned and walked away. That night there was barely gruel for dinner for Marcus and Quintus too. Marcus left a bit of his in his bowl. You must be hungry too, dog. He set it down and Ranger trotted over to lick it out. He can have some of mine as well, Quintus said as he started to lower his bowl. But Marcus said, no, you must eat all of that is offered to you. You must go stronger. It is your only chance. Quintus nodded slowly and lifted the bowl back to his mouth. Ranger was only a little sad about that. The gruel was gritty, salty oatmeal. Ranger licked out Sadie's oatmeal bowl after breakfast sometimes, even though he didn't like oatmeal much. Luke's bacon was always so much better. Ranger missed bacon, and he missed Sadie and Luke and the house and the yard. He even missed oatmeal. What was he supposed to do in this strange, sweaty place? He had been waiting for people to rescue. He had been watching for ways to help. But all Quintus did was bang that stick against the wooden post, and all Marcus did was watch Quintus and tell him how to hit the post better, harder, more. All Villius did was shout at Marcus, and all Cleto did was scowl and glare. All Ranger wanted to do was go home. Days passed. Ranger wasn't sure how many. Every one started the same way, a hunk of stale bread and a wedge of old cheese. Then Quintus and the other gladiators went back to the post whacking and sword lifting. Sometimes Quintus used his new weapons, the trident and the net, and trained with the older gladiator, whose arms and chest bulged with muscles. Quintus's arms grew bigger too. Every night Ranger curled up beside Marcus and nuzzled his hand, but the straw pallet was not a bed, and Marcus was not Luke. Finally, one morning, trumpets blared in the distance. Villius appeared as the sun was rising. It is time, he told Marcus. The Emperor has called for 3 days of games. Prepare Quintus. This time he shall fight. Marcus jumped up from a straw pallet. But he hasn't had enough training. He is ready, and he owes a debt for his escape. Villius narrowed his eyes and looked straight at Marcus. On the day you failed to keep watch as you were ordered. Marcus swallowed hard and lowered his eyes. He knew that Villius could have had him beaten or even killed for failing to do his job, but he had escaped punishment so far. I will prepare Quintus as you ask, he told Villius, and then he looked up. With whom will he be paired in the arena? He asked. even though he could have guessed the old gladiator's answer. "Clito," Villius said, with a smile creeping over his face, "I am sure they will put on the most excellent fight for the Emperor."